Okay, so we've all seen those jaw-dropping images that AI can just whip up out of thin air, right? But what if I told you that this whole revolution didn't really kick off with the big names like Dolly or Midjourney? Nope. It actually started with this kind of obscure research paper back in 2015, and the idea was totally wild. We're going to dig into how teaching an AI to destroy an image was, believe it or not, the secret to teaching it how to create one.
I mean, that's the central question, isn't it? How on earth do you take something that's just random static, total chaos, and turn it into a masterpiece, a piece of art? It feels like it shouldn't be possible. It's like turning TV snow into a photograph.
So look at this. On the one hand, you've got pure digital noise. It's basically a blizzard of random pixels, just nothing. And on the other, a complex, detailed image. The journey from that chaos to this order, it's not magic. It's a totally brilliant, completely counterintuitive idea that, you guessed it, came from that 2015 research paper that kicked this whole thing off. All right, so to really get why their breakthrough was such a big deal, we gotta rewind a little bit. See, back then, AI researchers were hitting this major roadblock. They were really, truly stuck on a fundamental dilemma when it came to building models that could, generate stuff. The problem was this really frustrating trade-off. It was like they had two choices, and both were kind of bad. On one side, you had what they called tractable models. Think of these as simple, easy to work with, totally predictable. The problem? They were just too weak to create anything complex or realistic. Then on the other side, you had flexible models. These were super powerful for sure, but they were a complete mathematical nightmare, so complex you couldn't really control them. So researchers were stuck. They could either have control or they could have power. They just couldn't have both. And the researchers who wrote the paper, they laid it all out perfectly in their opening line. This quote right here, it's the core challenge they were staring down. They weren't just tinkering to make a slightly better model. No, they were trying to solve a deep, fundamental problem that was holding the entire field back. So, where did their solution come from? Well, this is the cool part. It didn't come from computer science at all. It came from a totally different world. They looked over the field of physics for inspiration, and what they found was a completely radical new way of thinking about the problem.
And this right here is where the idea gets so cool. Their solution, inspired by physics, was to do the exact opposite of what you'd think. They said, forget trying to build an image from scratch. Instead, let's learn how to destroy one. Let's figure out how to systematically and slowly turn a perfect image into pure random noise.
Okay, I know non-equilibrium thermodynamics sounds super intimidating, right? But stick with me, because the basic idea is actually something you see every day. It's just the physics of how things move from order to disorder over time. Like an ice cube melting in a glass of water, or smoke from a candle just dissipating into the air. It's a one-way street from something structured to something random. And this is where the genius comes in. The researchers asked, what if we could teach an AI to walk down that street, but backwards? Okay, let's really get into the weeds here, because this is the heart of the entire idea. How in the world does destroying something teach you how to create it? So, it all breaks down into this two-step process. First, you've got the forward process. This part's actually really simple. You just take a perfectly good image and you slowly, step by step, add a little bit of noise, then a little more, and a little more, until it's completely drowned and becomes nothing but static. That's the destruction part. But here's where the magic happens, the reverse process. You train the AI to do one very specific thing. You show it any one of those noisy steps, and its only job is to figure out how to remove just a tiny bit of that noise, to take one single step back towards the original clean image. And by learning how to reverse every single one of those tiny little steps, it effectively learns the entire path from chaos back to creation. Let me give you an analogy that really makes this whole thing click. Imagine you want to teach an AI to sculpt a masterpiece, right? Instead of giving it a hammer and chisel, you show it a movie. But the movie is of a finished statue being completely pulverized, grain by grain, until it's just a pile of dust. Then you tell the AI your job is to learn how to play that movie in reverse. By understanding how to undo every single tiny step of that destruction, it would have to learn the exact shape and form of the original statue. And that's exactly what these diffusion models are doing.
And check this out. This is basically a picture of what the AI is learning. This isn't just random guesswork. This whole thing, this vector field, it's like a GPS for pixels. At any given point, no matter how noisy the image is, the arrows are telling the model exactly which way to nudge the pixels to get them one step closer to a real image. The AI is literally learning to draw a map that leads from pure chaos back to perfect order. Okay, so this all sounds great in theory, right? It's a really clever idea. But the million-dollar question is, did it actually work? Back in 2015, with the tech they had then, was this really the key that unlocked everything? Well, let's take a look at the results. So the researchers had to prove their new model could actually hang. They put it to the test on these standard, benchmark datasets. These are the datasets that pretty much everyone in the AI field uses to see how their new ideas stack up. We're talking about things like MNIST, which is just a massive collection of handwritten numbers, and Cipher10, which is a bunch of tiny pictures of everyday stuff like cars, birds, and dogs.
Now this is where things get really impressive. This shows just how powerful the model was even in its early days. The researchers basically just cut a big hole in a picture of tree bark and said to the model, okay, fill this in. And look at that, the result is pretty much seamless. And this is so important because it proves the model wasn't just memorizing pictures it had seen before. It was actually learning the underlying idea, the texture of tree bark. It learned to understand, not just to copy. And yeah, the hard numbers backed it all up. When they ran it on that handwritten number dataset, MINST, their new diffusion model was right there in the mix. It was competitive with all the other big, state-of-the-art methods at the time, like GANs. This was a massive deal. It was the proof of concept they needed. This wild idea they borrowed from physics, it actually worked.
And this, right here, from their own conclusion, is the mic drop. They built an algorithm that could learn to handle basically any kind of complex data you throw at it, but it was still tractable. It was still easy to train and easy to control. Remember that old dilemma, that trade-off between power and control? Well, they solved it. They finally found a way to have both. And in doing so, they laid the foundation for the entire AI image generation revolution that we're seeing today.
You know, the really amazing thing here is that this paper came out way back in 2015. It took years and years of more research, more papers, and way more powerful computers for this seed of an idea to grow into the incredible tools like Stable Diffusion that we have now. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other revolutionary ideas are just sitting out there, tucked away in academic papers, just waiting for their moment in the sun to completely change everything?